Could we all please rise to salute the flag? This is a regularly scheduled meeting of the school committee. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Could the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Gendron? Mr. Leary?
Here.
Ms. Martin?
Here.
Ms. Rosikowicz?
Here.
Ms. Scott?
Here.
Mr. Conway?
Here.
Mayor Elliott?
Here.
6 present, 1 absent.
Present, one absent. Good evening, everybody. As I mentioned, this is a meeting of September 17th, regularly scheduled school committee meeting. First order of business under special order of business. We have introduction of Anna Vasconcelos. Is that correct? Close enough? I apologize. I introduced myself at the beginning of the meeting, too. From the McAvenue Elementary School, principal, and Jason McCreven. Got that one right. From the STEM Academy, Rogers School principal. Would you like to come and say a few words? Or Madam Superintendent?
No. The tradition you have in this city to introduce your new principals. I just wanted to let everybody know that Kimberly Clemens has a parent meeting with her parents at the Bailey. We decided it was best for her to come next month, but she's your third principal you'll meet next week. So Ms. Vasconcelos, if she just wants to address the committee. Thank you, Mayor.
And once again, you did a really nice job with Vasconcelos. That's good. Thank you.
So it's a crapshoot. Sometimes you get it, you're right on, and sometimes you're way off.
That was great. I usually go by Mrs. V because it's easier said. But I just want to thank Superintendent Franco and the rest of her cabinet for allowing me the honor of serving as the principal. Last year I was the interim, and as the interim we worked really hard to put in place some structures to move the school to another place, and I'm very optimistic about this year and the team that we have leading, helping me to roll these things out, all our plan that we have in place. And I'm very optimistic about the work that we have ahead of us. I have a terrific assistant principal with me this year, and it is really a team that holds a lot of promise. So it's a great year, and it feels good. And I invite you all to come to my school and visit. Okay? Thank you.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Mrs. V.
Yes, good evening. Thank you very much for inviting me here tonight. I'm honored and excited to become the new principal of the STEM Academy at the Rogers School. Our public elementary school is dedicated to identifying and building the skills needed for success in the future workplaces of America. We aim to promote science, technology, engineering, and mathematics through thinking skills, inquiry, and group projects. We hope every child will use his or her naturally inquisitive nature to grow the appreciation of the STEM subjects. So thank you again for this opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. McCreven, and thank you for joining us. Next item on the agenda, we have minutes for approval of the minutes of the regularly scheduled school committee meeting of Wednesday, September 3rd. Motion to accept by Mr. Conway, seconded by Ms. Rosikowicz. All those in favor signify by saying aye, and the opposed. Motion to accept and place on file is adopted. Next item, number 4, is permission to enter. Madam Superintendent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To Dr. Franklin Perkins in the amount of $785 to amend the existing contract to provide for a rate increase. Funding will be provided by the school department budget special education tuition account. To EDCO Collaborative in the amount of $50,051 to provide for the out-of-district tuition costs for one student enrolled in receiving services as outlined in the special education IEP, funding provided by the school department budget special education tuition account. To North Shore Educational Consortium in the amount of $90,490 to provide for the out-of-district tuition costs for 2 students enrolled in receiving services and as outlined in the special education IEP, funding provided by the Special Education Tuition Account. To Stevens Children's Home Incorporated in the amount of $82,855 to provide for the out-of-district tuition costs for one student, a role in receiving services in their special education IEP. Again, funding provided by the School Department Special Education Tuition Account. To the Devereaux Foundation in the amount of $47,510 to provide for out-of-district tuition costs for one student receiving services for their IEP, funding provided by Special Education Tuition Account. And to the International Institute in the amount of $11,600 to provide for services to the refugee community liaison interpreters who provide school department and schools with bilingual bicultural assistance to facilitate homeschool connections for refugee groups, funding provided by the Title III grant.
Thank you, Madam Superintendent. Question, Ms. Ross-Sigurd. Move to approve by Ms. Ross-Sigurd, second by Ms. Martin. Roll call.
Mr. Gendron? Mr. Leary?
Yes.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
Ms. Ross Sikowicz?
Yes.
Ms. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Conway?
Yes.
Mayor Elliott?
Yes.
6 yeas, 1 absent, approved.
Next item under memorials, we have Antonio Negron Perez, father of Robinson school teacher Gabrielle Negron. We also have Eric S. Sullivan, son of McAuliffe school nurse Patricia Sullivan. Could we all please rise for a moment of silence and darken chambers? May they rest in peace. Next section of the agenda, we have motions. First motion of the evening by Mr. Conway to ask superintendent and the mayor to meet with city manager for the purpose of developing a plan to resurface the tennis courts at Shed Park. Seconded by Ms. Scott. Mr. Conway?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just, again, I think it's pretty self-explanatory, but I'd just like to say a couple words in regards to this. The courts at Shed Park are actually the home courts for Lowell High School. I mean, that's their facility. So any of the towns and cities that come in to play against Lowell High School, that's our home field, shall we say. Also, it's when you take a look at it, it's also the training center for the youth tennis in the city of Lowell. And there have been 2 memorials out there, one by an Elmer Wren and Dennis Kruziak to signify the importance of this area. I think you'll see that if you take a look at those courts at this point, it's kind of like taking a look at some of the streets and the roads. Once they start getting the cracks in them, over the wintertime you see the heaves take place, and before you know it, it really it destroys the court. So again, self-explanatory. I appreciate support on this motion. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Conway. Further discussion on this motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Next motion of the evening by Ms. Scott and Ms. Ross-Sigurd. Request the superintendent provide a report on plans that will allow more adequate amounts of lunch and recess time at all schools in the district, including the possibility of extending the school day. No second needed. Who's going first?
Right here.
Ms. Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I made this motion after I was approached by a group of parents from the Riley, the Pine, and the Pawtuckaville Memorial that were concerned about the lack of food that their children were eating, and that they were coming home hungry after school and even eating their lunch on the way home in the car. I had already been aware of that, same concern, because my own children were doing it. I was decreasing and further decreasing the amount of food that they were sending in every day for their own lunch. The current time period for the contract for a teacher's lunch is 25 minutes. So during that 25 minutes, the children have to travel from their classroom, use the restrooms, wash their hands, have recess, have lunch, and get back to their classroom. It's much too short of a period of time. They also need time to socialize. I mean, it's important for them to socialize at recess and just have time to decompress from their busy day at school. So I don't know what can be done as far as contract discussions, but I just would like to see some plan that will move forward with a longer period of time for lunch and recess. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Scott. Ms. Rosigowitz?
I just have one comment on this particular motion, and that's this really is very timely, given the fact that we are at the beginnings of our contract negotiations with our teacher unions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Conway?
Just very quickly, I think that, one of the things that we could do is take a look at the surrounding towns and cities and find out what their time frame would be on lunches, and if it is longer, how do they do it, and still stay within the law. Thank you.
Makes sense. Further discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. And the opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to the next section of the agenda, under subcommittees, we have personnel, report and approval of the minutes of the meeting of Thursday, September 11th, 2014. Madam Chairperson, Ms. Martin.
Thank you very much. Meeting did take place on September 11th. In attendance from the subcommittee were myself, Mr. Conway, Ms. Scott, and other committee members attending were Mr. Leary and Mr. Gendron. And we had Superintendent Jean Franco as well as Deputy Superintendent Jay Lang in attendance. Very quick meeting, started very late because of my fault. I apologize yet again to my colleagues for that. My inability to read a calendar clearly impacted me that evening. But thankfully everyone waited and we were able to get through our single topic of discussion, which was the upcoming superintendent's evaluation. We had received the goals from the superintendent. The subcommittee had requested some additional instruments for us to have as part of this overall evaluation, including the evaluation instrument, the performance grid, the approved goals, which were sent out again, and then the progress report. We are at a point right now where the superintendent can't provide us with the actual performance goals information because the testing information, the MCAS testing information from the state is still embargoed, so it can't be shared with us yet. But she is obviously very willing to share that information. We just need to wait for that release. The schedule moving forward does get a little bit challenging, and one of the key things I think the subcommittee discussed was the idea of shifting our October meeting. Our regularly scheduled meeting is for October 15th. And a request was made through the subcommittee to be put forth before the full committee if we could change that meeting to Wednesday, October 22nd. It gives us an extra week of time for members to review the information once we've received it from the state, for any individual member to carve out time to meet with the superintendent individually, which is something I always recommend as we go through the evaluation process, because it really does lend itself to a great opportunity to get questions answered and to firm up ideas on a lot of these different, performance measures. So I would put that forth in the form of a motion. My understanding is that it is available and we'd be able to make that change based on the city use of the space, so we would be able to do that. So I would make a motion that the previously scheduled October 15th meeting of the Lowell School Committee be pushed back to Wednesday, October 22nd, and I would appreciate my colleagues' support.
Okay, recommendation to bring forward, changing the meeting, canceling the October 15th
Yes,
meeting.
I'm sorry,
And
I should have said
rescheduling that to the 22nd. Motion by Ms. Martin, seconded by Mr. Leary. Discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Gendron? Mr. Leary?
Yes.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
Ms. Rosigowitz?
Yes.
Ms. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Conway?
Yes.
Mayor Elliott?
Yes.
6 yeas, 1 absent, approved.
Moving on
I
to
would submit that as a report of progress. Thank you very much.
entertain a motion to approve by Ms. Scott, seconded by Mr. Conway. Accept the report as report of progress and place on file. All those in favor signify by saying aye. And the opposed? Motion passes. Moving on to the next subcommittee report. We have a Lowell High report. Mr. Chairperson, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Conway.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to delay the report until the next school committee meeting.
Motion delayed by Mr. Conway, seconded by Mr. Leary to delay this report to the next regularly scheduled meeting. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Report is delayed to the next meeting. Moving on to item number 12. Student Support Services, still under Subcommittee Report. Report and approval of minutes of the meeting of Tuesday, September 16th. Madam Chairperson, Ms. Rosigowitz.
Mr. Mayor, I prefer to defer this report to our next session.
Motion to delay to this report of the Student Support Services Subcommittee till the next regularly scheduled meeting by Ms. Rosigowitz, second by Ms. Scott. All those in favor signify by saying aye, and the opposed, that motion carries as well. Moving on to reports of the superintendent. Item number 13, we have disposal of surplus kitchen equipment. Madam Superintendent?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Deputy Superintendent Lang provided us with a list of surplus equipment that needs to be disposed of. There is a specific process that has to be followed through Chapter 30B, and I believe that needs to have the approval of the committee.
Move to approve by Ms. Rosigowitz, second by Ms. Martin. Roll call.
Mr. Gendron? Mr. Leary?
Yes.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
Ms. Rosikowicz?
Yes.
Ms. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Conway?
Yes.
Mayor Elliott?
Yes.
6 yeas, 1 absent, approved.
Next item is regarding Lowell High School athletics, is to a waiver request for Rule 53. Madam Superintendent?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a request by Athletic Director DeProfio, who is looking to see if we could have a waiver to allow 7th and 8th grade students try out and participate on the ice hockey team and the ski teams during this upcoming school year. To allow for that differential, it has to be approved by the committee, and the mayor has to authorize the application. So for your review and any questions you may have.
Move to approve by Mr. Leary, seconded by Mr. Conway. On the motion, Ms. Rosigowitz and Ms. Martin.
I just have a quick question. So, if I recall correctly, we've approved these waivers before, but then my next question is, approximately how many 7th and 8th graders do we have participating in high school sports?
Madam Superintendent?
Mr. Lane, do you know?
I don't know exactly. Ballpark, I know last season on the hockey team, I believe there were at least 2 middle school student, 8th grade students that were able to participate on the hockey team. Skiing, I believe, may have had 1 or 2 also. The biggest issue that they run into is hockey, also skiing, sports where kids traditionally don't just pick it up when they come to high school. They've been involved in league sports all the way up through high school. And from time to time, just given the wave of kids who are able to, say, play hockey on a competitive team, you might just not have enough to be able to field your varsity and JV team. So it's a good opportunity for 8th grade kids also to kind of have an experience at the high school. And I think it helps kind of in that transition when they go to high school also sports-wise. But basically, it's these kind of specialty sports that have a hard time sometimes fielding the right number of participants for the 2 teams.
So I just have one additional question. I apologize to my colleague. So how are middle school students made aware of these opportunities?
Each of the, if you approve this, then each of the schools will receive flyers that can go home, through the parents to notify them of the opportunities, and then the phys ed teachers in the middle schools would also hand out flyers and promotional materials to get the kids to sign up. I do know in the world of hockey in particular, I don't know quite as much about skiing, you kind of know who the cohorted kids are from the local teams because it's all grade level dependent prior to that. But it is advertised at the schools, a letter will go out, and kids will be notified of the tryouts.
All right, great, thank you.
If there's no objection, I just have a couple of questions. So I guess I'm just a little bit concerned with knowing the commitment for hockey and the impact that may have on these 7th and 8th grade students time-wise. We've done this in the past. How many students are there not enough kids for the hockey program? Mr. Lang?
Yeah, basically that's it. What it comes down to field the varsity and the JV hockey team at the high school, there's just not enough active hockey players, or potentially not enough active hockey players for that particular year to run the sport. And so by opening it up to primarily eighth graders, I assume you could have a seventh grader that would try out, but it gives them an opportunity to ideally fill some of the JV slots and get some experience so that the following year they're ready for the varsity program. Most of these kids will also be participating in other kind of travel teams or whatever they call it for hockey. So they are getting a significant amount of kind of playing time outside of school also. But they do have to juggle because they also have to maintain the same academic standards that the high school kids do as far as course participation, absenteeism, and academically keeping their grades up to be able to participate.
So can I just follow up with that? I mean, this letter indicates that they are under the direct jurisdiction and supervision of the high school principal. How does that work?
That means actually they have to be enrolled in Lowell Public Schools. They have to be in our school system. And this question will come up from time to time also because you could have a student who attends say, a parochial school in Lowell who is a Lowell resident. Under the MIA guidelines, they're not eligible to play on our high school team. I know in Lowell Catholic, you could actually be a parochial school student and then potentially play in the Lowell Catholic team. But if you have to be in one of our Lowell schools, you have to be in our pipeline of organization to be able to have this happen for you.
Okay. Liability-wise, I mean,
No different than any of our other
we're
high school
exempt.
kids.
I mean, we got 7th and 8th graders playing with 9th and 10th graders. That's physically, there can be a little bit of a difference. Mr. Leary?
Just a lot of the hockey players I know they're really playing, the eighth graders are playing with ninth graders in the youth hockey league because the age group's the same. But I think, as Mr. Lang was saying, it's really a JV, kind of like making it a farm
Get the
team.
JV program going? Okay. Mr. Conway?
Just through you to Mr. Lang, could it be, is it just numbers or could it also just be the skill ability?
No, it's purely numbers because there's some other requirement written in the regulation that the middle school kids can only fill a spot if there's not enough high school kids to fill the spots.
So in other words, let's say, just for argument's sake, somebody in the 7th grade was good enough, who's been playing since he was 3 years old, or her since she was 3 years old. Now they make the team, and now all of a sudden there's more enthusiasm with that team.
Right.
And the team is fielded with enough of people from the high school. And that would exclude that person in the 8th grade, technically?
You cannot cut a high school student to take a middle school student.
Okay.
So all the high school kids who actually sign up and try out would have to be selected for the team first. And then this would be to backfill open spots.
And do we do it in other areas too? I mean, don't we do that with the band too? Don't we take kids from the middle school in the band?
Well, the middle school has their own band program, and those
Yeah, but-
kids come up and work with the high school band.
Oh, all
But it's
right.
not a competition where they're actually trying out. There's no, say,
I know, but did they become part, the middle school, do they become part of the high school band?
I honestly don't know. I do know they practice together. I don't know if they have competitions together. The reason that we do these waivers just on a year-to-year basis is because the coaches will kind of look and see what they think are coming up prospect-wise. And again, these two sports, who's playing hockey or who's skiing, to be able to fill the slot. So we don't do them as a blanket type application. We just do it season to season.
And traditionally, those are probably the only sports that would be included in this?
These are the only two.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. I just want to make sure that this is, I can understand trying to fill some spots in the JV so we can field the team, but just get a little nervous when 7th and 8th graders are going to play up with some older kids. But generally speaking, how many last year, Mr. Lang?
I don't know exactly on the ski team, but I believe there were 2 8th graders who played up on the high school team.
Okay.
And oftentimes it actually happens too. They're siblings of other kids who are playing at the high school level, so the whole family's involved. Skiing, I honestly don't know.
Okay. It's not a general rule. It's just more or less an exception.
Correct.
Thank you. Discussion, roll call.
Mr. Gendron? Mr. Leary?
Yes.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
Ms. Ross Sikowicz?
Yes.
Ms. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Conway?
Yes.
Mayor Elliott?
Yes.
6 yeas, 1 absent, approved.
Next item, state delegation, Madam Superintendent.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is in response to a motion by committee member Scott, who requested that I invite the state delegation to an ongoing semi-annual meeting to discuss district issues, including the impact of proposed legislation, and to receive budgetary updates and assist the district in short and long-term planning. So at this particular time, Senator Donahue has been very helpful. She suggested that the really good time of year that would be helpful to all would be probably in the fall, and then again probably around May. That's when a lot of the work where they're proposing budget and a lot of legislation and bills come through. So those are the two times. So I had potentially planned a meeting for October 15th, which we could have maybe at a later time. It was going to be before the school committee meeting, but since the committee has voted to change that, maybe I could make it, and I will, everybody was available because you were coming to this meeting, so we will we have that time with our delegation, so I will get a time out and we'll reaffirm that and in a location. For now, we'll still continue meeting at the Rogers School because there is no space at the central offices at Merrimack to date, so that's what we'll do. And if you have any questions, Ms. Scott particularly, or anything else I can do to arrange it.
Discussion, motion to accept the report and place on file by Mr. Leary, seconded by Ms. Martin. All those in favor signify by saying aye, and the opposed. Motion carries. Next item, parent involvement.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This parental involvement report was provided to me by Title I Director Patty Gajeka. It's a lengthy report, but what I want to bring out to you is that the Title I office has really done a very good job of conducting parent surveys in a way that they get quite a bit of response. And so this report talks about the positive and what we really need to work on. And so when we talk about the positive things in the district, if you look on the second page, there is a response of 884 middle school parents that send in the surveys. And so we find out that they understand school policy and they encourage their children to complete homework and to read. But the parents also rank themselves lowest in being able to volunteer time to attend school meetings, and they are requesting extra time in the 4 more school meetings, and also they do use the compacts and the student handbooks that we send home. That was some good feedback. They also indicate that their child's school is very strong in the areas of providing information in languages that they understand, having consistent means of homeschool communication, so how we get information to parents, and that we meet the academic needs of students. In the elementary level, sometimes it's something we're weak in, so we provide all parts of this, is encouraging students to strive for excellence. They think that we can do a better job at that, and acknowledging student achievement. So parents are looking for more outlets for us to make sure that we celebrate students' growth and achievement. And so another one that came out in the particular middle school survey was sometimes schools don't have a neat and clean appearance. So that was something that was looked into. The reason why I'm giving you this general information is because the surveys have been done for many years, but I really want to use the information in a way that's meaningful. So as we had one meeting with the Citywide Parent Council, people who are trying to go forward with it, I want to use this information so we can go deeper with it, because your response in Lowell is amazing. The elementary school surveys, 1,858 surveys came back, and so what parents say that they really think that they're doing well is they make sure that they have emergency cards, they make sure they help their children with homework, they monitor and limit children's use of video, and they do use a computer at home. However, they think they need to work more as elementary parents at volunteering and providing more resources for the school, attending more school meetings, and requesting extra meetings for conferences. They think our schools are strong overall in the elementary level, that they're safe, that we show respect for all children and adults, and that we respect contributions that that the parents make to us. Also, there's some good homeschool communications with planners, calendars, newsletters. So some of the weaknesses in elementary school is that they want some more information about safety interventions and programs such as internet safety, so that helps us to get some programs going for parents at night in those areas. Also, they want more information about attendance, promotion, retention, and they would like more opportunities to volunteer. There are some responses over the last couple of years, but I want you to know that there are parent liaisons. This year in our Title I budget, there were some cuts, and some of the cuts were in full-time parent liaisons. So, but there is a part-time person in each building, and they're worked with as a group. And so as we build the parent liaisons, they're looking at these surveys. One of the student support service people from Assistant Superintendent Durkin's office works with the parents to meet the needs. So we're going to have more of a defined plan, and when we're working with our parent liaisons on what we're going to be working on to make these surveys improve. But it is really time for us to use this information to build more opportunities for parents. So I just wanted to provide some of the information that we'll be using to work with our liaisons to build better communication with parents as a whole in the district. So I will welcome any questions or you may have.
Thank you, Madam Superintendent. Ms. Rassikowitz?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. I have a couple of questions. Let's see, would it be possible, now I appreciate the summative data, but the summary, I'm sorry. Is it possible to actually get the percentages per each response and have that report issued back to us in the next, for the next school committee meeting?
Yes.
In our packet?
Yep.
And then the other piece is, for the 2 schools that do not have PTOs, is there an effort underway to have a staff person work with parents who are interested in forming a PTO? And my third and final question is all of our school site councils, are they all populated? Thank you.
Madam Superintendent?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Rassikowitz. Annually, from the superintendent's office, I've sent home a list of to every school principal. And there are school site councils. I just sent it again to be returned within the next couple of weeks. I can provide that information. Also, as far as any school that does not have active PTOs, we do have a couple of schools that have some problems in that area. We will work, it's with the Office of Student Services to work on that. But we do have school site councils. We ask our principals to list the elected officials, all of whom participate on that. And that's public information, so I can provide a report of at least the school site council members as soon as I get it back. I think I'm asking for it on the end of the month, the last day of the month this year, so I can give a report of that if you like.
Further discussion? Ms. Scott?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just noticed on both charts for an area of needs improvement, it provides additional opportunities to talk with teachers. Contractually, we have 2 open houses, correct, right now? I'm not sure if they mean, whether or not we're relaying out that they can email the teachers at any time, or if they mean in the evening to sit down and actually talk with the teacher. And one of the open houses, I know at my daughter's school, I believe it's across the board, is after school, and the other is in the evening. So if you're a working parent, that could leave you with one opportunity to come in and meet with the teachers. So I don't know whether or not we could look at what other towns contractually, if that's, common to have more than one evening open house. And then the second area I just wanted to find out an update on was X2, the online system with parents that we were working on. I don't know if, I know in the high school we had a good number of the staff on board. I know Mr. Leary's brought this up quite a few times. I was just curious to find out where we are with that, with the communication system between the teachers and parents. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Scott. Further discussion on this? If there's no objection, I just had a couple of questions if I asked them from the podium. I think this is a pretty helpful report, and there's some pretty good information. I was impressed with the number of responses. And I think there are some good recommendations, Madam Superintendent. I think what was of interest was the sort of comments from the parent liaisons, the issues that they identified. One of them was language barriers, as well as parents have limited time or may not follow through. I guess my question is, how do we engage parents a little bit more? Because that seems to be sort of a consistent theme throughout here, throughout this report. Incentives. So I guess number one is how do we do that? Number two, language barrier. What language barriers with the parents?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I'm going to tell you that I've tried a million different ways in 37 years to include parents in a way that's really respectful. We have tried many different things. We translate as much as possible, especially important documents, but what we're trying to do now, as a matter of fact, is work with specific groups of parents. We've been working, last year, you'll see on another report, I think it was the last month, that I've worked with groups specifically. For instance, the newcomer parents come together in a way that's really beneficial. We've worked with the International Institute on parents who are really new, because their ability to communicate in school is very different, so we're trying to pull those groups out. I am working myself and Mr. Martin, Ms. Desmond, and Mr. Jarvis from the high school, Stephen Jarvis. We are working with the Hispanic pastors, because we're looking at the data and what's happening with that subgroup to get a little bit deeper. So we've tried a lot of different ways, Mr. Mayor, and it's always a work in progress, having cultural nights, lots of different things, but it is a challenge, and we need to probably do some more to get that involvement up to speed.
I think your efforts are well documented in this report, and I do know it's a struggle to get and continue to keep parents involved. They are busy working 2 jobs, but it's also, I think, very important to keep them involved and engaged in the school, so I commend you for your efforts. I just had one other question under response comparisons. It seems from last year, again, to this year, that the dissemination of information about safety, intervention and programs on the internet was again raised, again, about safety on the internet and bullying. Are there increased efforts being made in the school systems to increase the amount of information, if that seems to be raised last year and again this year?
Yes, we've, I think that the website piece of it, we have to improve. But as far as having active safety drills and things like that, we've gotten better. There is a meeting coming up with parents about what we're doing. I think Ms. Durkin probably has more details about that. But as far as the response, the active response that we're doing, so I'll ask her to comment about that. But I think that we can make much more of a presence about those kind of things on the website for sure.
Okay, maybe I should clarify. I'm probably more focused and concerned about safety on the internet and the bullying aspect. So if I can just clarify that, if those, and I think that's an area where we do need to increase our efforts to educate the kids, the younger elementary and middle school kids about the internet.
So I know that over the past couple of years, there have been special programs for parents citywide on the internet. Last year, we did not do anything, and so it would be something that we specifically can target with parents. We are going to be hosting 3 evenings citywide to unveil the options-based response and safety protocols. I'm thinking that perhaps at that evening, we can also we could have a survey of parents and ask them for specific topics of interest revolving around safety of their children. So we can do that. The first one is September 29th.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Leary?
Just which, Mayor, you had pointed out something I thought was important, and Madam Superintendent, I like what you're doing with reaching out to the Hispanic and Latino groups in terms of finding a way to attack those numbers. I think a lot of it comes down to, it really is cultural. And I think you have a lot of opportunity with the adult ed group. I think they reach out to different groups like the CMAA and other groups. We need really to tie into that more effectively. Just hiring folks who speak someone's language is a good start to it, but I think it comes down to really culture. There's a lot of parents who are, my age or a little older who really don't have a comfort level coming to the schools, whereas what we did with the Merklin was pretty effective. And I think that type of massive response, and that was what's going to work. So I think what you're doing with the churches in terms of the Hispanics are fantastic. I think we need to do that for other groups within the city. The newcomers, we're putting a lot of effort, but I think sometimes it just bogs down the size of our operation, that we're not still being effective with folks who have been here for a while. And again, it's more than just language. It comes down to it's a cultural issue as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Leary. Mr. Conway?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just very quickly, I appreciate the efforts of your administration and the staff of trying to bring the parents into the schools, because I think that we all know that it's so paramount to get them involved, because I think that certainly helps to generate student success. And also there is a frustration, I think, being in education, as you've said, 37 years, I certainly have seen it over the years. You constantly are trying to come up with ideas, spark anything that will get parents into the schools. And again, I think that some of the issues, and my colleague just mentioned it, some of the religious groups, I think that's extremely important. And I think the other area that I found in the schools was very helpful was if those liaisons reaching out to the various parents and to bring them in. And again, it's one of those, it's ongoing. If we could somehow take a look 10 years or 20 years or 50 years from now, this discussion will still be taking place of how do we get parents involved into the schools. So again, I applaud you, Madam Superintendent, and the staff for doing the best they can and still continuing to come up with new ideas. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Conway. Further discussion? All those in favor of the motion to accept the report as a report of progress and place on file signify by saying aye. And the opposed? Motion by Ms. Scott, seconded by Ms. Ross-Sigowitz to accept the report as a report of progress and place on file. All those in favor signify by saying aye. And the opposed? Motion carries. Next item, response to Mr. Leary's motion of May 7th, 2014 regarding hiring of new employees and candidate follow-up. Madam Superintendent?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. In response to a motion by Mr. Leary regarding hiring of new employees and how we inform candidates if they're not selected for a position, we offer the same hiring practices report submitted to me by Mr. Cassidy. In each of the postings, the supervisor is designated as a hiring manager for a position, and they're responsible to review the qualified applicants. For administrative searches, principals, assistant principals, special education director, superintendents, we follow the current school committee policy, which is usually a person from the Unit B administrators run those searches. Second rounds are, in most cases, run by my administration, and we follow that policy. For department specialists, coordinators, directors, they're interviewed by committees that include the assistant superintendent, staff, principals, and parents. The decisions are made on building-based positions by the principal. The final decisions for district-wide positions are made by the assistant superintendent. In some cases, depending on the position, I will be asked for a second round. For teachers and paras, candidates are interviewed by building and staff and principals. Final decisions are made by the principals. Going to specialists, guidance counselors, technology staff, again, by the administrator responsible for the department. And the final decisions are made by the principals wherever they're being housed according to the Reform Act. For the coaches, interviews are done by the athletic director and the headmaster or the middle school principal where that comes into play. Final decisions are made by the high school headmaster or the middle school principal. For support personnel, candidates are interviewed by directors, coordinators, administrator, building principals. Final decision is made by that principal or recommendation from the office director or coordinator, depending. After the interviews are completed, the personnel office sends a finalist an offer announcement to the specialized email account. The email includes a conditional offer as for a particular position at a specific grade level according to education or otherwise. The email also links them to the health insurance, policies, criminal background information, and also alerts them to the non-successful candidates. The personnel office closes the online posting as soon as the finalists report to the office. For unsuccessful candidates, it's the practice of the Lowell Public Schools that the hiring manager contacts unsuccessful applicants who receive an interview. Applicants who do not receive an interview are sent an automated message from the district's online application system, and that's how they're told. And they complete their paperwork, and they sign an offer letter if they're given that particular position. So according to the practices in place, this is how we conduct business, but I welcome any questions you may have.
Mr. Leary?
Thank you. Thank you for all that information. We put the motion out in May, and we get a response in the middle of September. And that's kind of the point that I was trying to make. I apply for a job, I don't get interviewed. What time frame am I going to receive that notice? So if I apply for something today, you hire someone today, what time frame am I going to know that I'm not even going to be interviewed? That's the key. The key is being professional, because folks don't get a timely response. The policy's fantastic. I know who hires who. That's not ambiguous. The point is, if I'm not going to hire you, how am I finding that out? By announcing it in front of, in front of a group of people, hey, I hired Jim Leary to be the blah, blah, blah. Is that how I find out? I mean, that's really the issue that I was speaking of, is professionalism. How do you treat people who apply for a job? We're a professional organization. We're a quite, medium-sized organization that should have a very functional human resources department. So if Jim Leary, if I apply for a job and I walk into a meeting and I find out I didn't get the job based on someone else being introduced, that's not a professional way of responding. And that's happening. Folks are finding out, publicly that they didn't get the job when you're announcing the candidates in some cases. Not appropriate. I think folks should be getting something in a timely manner, in a written fashion, especially if they work for us, if we're not interviewing. Frankly, if they're working for us and you're not interviewing them, we should be alerting them face to face, saying, listen, we're not choosing you at this point in time. Because we should be encouraging people who are within the system, who are applying for promotions, to want to go for something else. And getting feedback not only from the hiring manager, but their direct manager. Why didn't I get this position? What can I do to get promoted within the organization? What skill sets do I need to develop? Is it my interviewing skills? This is very important in any organization that wants to take people from within and promote them. When you go into a meeting and you ascertain that you didn't get the position because we're announcing that, Jim Leary just got hired, that isn't the way we want to do it. And I'm kind of going on a little long here, but that's the frustrating part. It's how it's done. I know who's hiring who. That's not ambiguous. What I want to know is, if I didn't get hired, how am I finding out about that? And if I'm working internally, if I work for us, if I'm a teacher and I applied for a vice principal position, who's contacting me? And what steps are we taking really to go forward to develop that individual to really meet what hopefully their goals are? Thank you.
Mr. Conway?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just very briefly, I certainly agree with Mr. Leary's comments. I think he's right on target. I think that we obviously have to firm up the mechanics of the hiring and the notification. I think that's extremely important. People apply for jobs. They're on pins and needles. They're either looking for promotions or they're looking to try to start their life, and they need to be notified as soon as possible. I firmly agree with my colleague on that. Just one quick question on the athletics and the coaches there. There's the first sentence, it says, other interested parties. What do we mean by other interested parties?
Madam Superintendent?
I would think that whoever the headmaster or the athletic director wants to invite to that particular interview, it's always open to the manager to put other people on the interview, but I don't necessarily know, Mr. Conway, I can
I
ask
think that, you see,
clarification.
this is where we have a little bit of vagueness and something like that. I think that should be a little bit more specific. And also, it's my understanding, and I've been told in the past, the chairman of the Lowell High School athletic committee is supposed to be on all hiring of varsity coaches. So if that's the case, that should be down there too. And I think we should clarify what we're talking about, other interested parties.
Okay, thank you.
Okay?
I will do that. Yep.
Thank you.
So you're going to put that in a form of motion, Mr. Conway, to get that language be clarified?
I don't know if we need it in a motion. I think that if you prefer, we can put it in the form of a motion.
Well, I think if you want it tightened up and part of the policy, then it should be formalized.
I'm
with
just
Martin.
curious where that's being drawn from, that language? That the chair of the subcommittee, of the athletic subcommittee serves on the,
The reason
Hearing.
why is because 2 years ago, I was the chairman of the Lowell High School Athletic Subcommittee, and I was told that I had to be on those committees.
On the
on
selection
varsity-
committees?
On the varsity, sit on those varsities, because I sat on a number of them. Now, they might have not
They
told
might
me
have
the
tricked
truth.
you, I don't know.
Do you
I'm
think they
just-
tricked me
yeah.
on that?
It could happen. I just think that might be problematic. I mean, just because we're not involved in any other hiring decisions as a committee member, I mean, I didn't know, I've never been on that
No, I
committee.
mean, I,
no.
you know,
I mean,
Mr. Lang?
Yeah, I was just
I
gonna-
think this language does need to be clarified, so it might come in the form of a motion, just
to review.
to have the superintendent or assistant superintendent come back with a little bit more specific language on the hiring process for coaches. But Mr. Lang?
Yeah, I was just going to say to Ms. Martin's request, there's actually language in the teacher's contract that predates ed reform that had the chairperson of the athletic subcommittee as one of the people that would be participating in the interviews. I do know over the years the chairperson's been invited to participate in the interviews. It probably should be looked at because it is in there. It certainly predates ed reform, and it's probably outside of the guidelines. But we can come back at the next meeting with that if you'd like.
Okay, Ms. Martin?
I just ask, I mean, to free up some of Mr. Conway's time, and.
Well, I'm not the chair now, so it doesn't matter.
Is it Steve? Oh, okay.
Correct.
So I'd probably recommend that we refer to the law department, would be my thought,
Right.
that they'd be able to take a look at it, because it does seem like it's a bit of a, anachronistic.
Okay, so a motion to refer this to the assistant superintendent in the law department for report and recommendation on the process used to select coaches. Motion by Ms. Martin, second by Ms. Ross-Sigurd. Question, on the motion? All those in favor of that motion signify by saying aye, and the opposed, that motion carries. Motion to accept the report as a report of progress and place on file by Mr. Conway, seconded by Ms. Okay, on the report, sorry.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to, I want to express my agreement with Mr. Leary's comments with regard to the hiring practice summary, in particular to the unsuccessful candidate section. Not to belabor Mr. Leary's comments, but I have heard from a number of applicants within the community who've applied, and they've never received any number one, never been interviewed, and number two, never been notified either by the hiring manager or via email, as this report would seem to indicate. So somewhere there's a breakdown in the system, and perhaps within HR, that's something that needs to be worked out and well documented, so that you can actually pull up a report that says phone calls were made on X date, so that folks just aren't left out in the cold, wondering what is happening with potential employment. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ross-Sigurd. Further discussion? Entertain a motion to accept the report of as a report of progress and placed on file by Mr. Conway, seconded by Mr. Leary. Further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item is the personnel report. Madam Superintendent.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is the monthly update of retirements, recognition, and promotions in the Lowell Public Schools for your review.
Thank you. Move to approve by Ms. Martin, seconded by Ms. Scott. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item is list of eligible teachers. Madam Superintendent.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, this is your monthly list of eligible teachers for your review and comment.
Move to approve.
Move to approve by Mr. Conway, seconded by Ms. Martin. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? That motion carries as well. Next item, number 20, is the school supply list. Madam Superintendent.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a response to the motion by Mr. Rasikowitz, which was requesting me to work with staff to post a school supply list of Lowell Public Schools website in advance to the start of school to allow parents opportunity to better prepare students for school. Ms. Abrams reports that the list was put on the website before school began. And if you need any more information, I welcome any questions you may have.
Thank you. Motion to approve by Ms. Rasikowitz, seconded by Ms. Scott on the motion. Ms. Rasikowitz?
Thank you, Mayor. So I appreciate your working with IT to get this up on the website in advance of school, but hopefully this carries through, year after year and is not just a one-time issue or posting on our website. I think it's really of great importance that our parents be advised well in advance of the start of a school year of what their child's needs are, so that they're all very well prepared on the first day of school. It's frustrating as a parent to sort of, to spend money and then find that you've wasted money and because you didn't get the correct supplies. So as for high school, there has to be a standard list of supplies that can be published or posted or whatever. So again, so that parents of high school students can have their kids prepared on the first day of school. Now, this summer I happened to purchase a calculator, a scientific calculator for my freshmen. And I made a guess. It was rather expensive, $25, $30. It was an expensive item. Now, and again, not knowing if that was the correct item. Now, thankfully, it was within 30 days of purchase. Now, if I had to, I would have returned it, could have returned it and got my money back. Unfortunately, it was the right item. But my point is that we shouldn't be leaving our parents guessing. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion? All those, motion to accept the report as a report of progress and place on file, we already did it. All those in favor signify by saying aye, and the opposed, motion carries. The next item is GPA and class rank. Madam Superintendent?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This was a report that was submitted to me by Assistant Superintendent Abrams, and this came about as the discussion, we've had discussion on the floor about the GPA and the class rank, and the recommendation of the high school administration is to reinstate the GPA and the class rank on report cards. And so the high school will reinstate this policy. It'll be calculated at the close of each semester into the second and fourth marking period, and it will be actually, it's recommended that it be provided an overall percentage range of their ranking, again calculated by the close of each semester. The range of percentage will be the top 5%, top 10%, and top 20%. Students who fall below 20% would not be provided a range. This was the recommendation by the headmaster, and it is going to be something, it was reviewed at the Lowell High Subcommittee meeting, but we brought this forward separately, only because we wanted to be able to happen for this year and wanted to get your review in this area.
Thank you. Ms. Martin?
If I could, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to defer this to our next meeting where the maker of the motion is not here.
Okay.
I mean, and I'm sure we'll have, we'll want to weigh in on it, so I think I would request
Motion by
that.
Ms. Martin to delay to the next meeting. Second by Mr. Leary. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. And the opposed? we'll delay this report till the next meeting. Next item, under new business, we have permission to post student center social worker. Motion to approve by Mr. Leary, seconded by Mr. Conway. Mr. Conway.
Thank you. I have a question through you to the superintendent of schools. I'm looking at this posting here, and I'm not sure if I'm understanding this correctly. Is this a Unit B job?
Madam Superintendent?
If it would be a social worker, I believe so. Yes.
Because it says $32.50 per hour, and it's Unit B. That's
It's
my...
hourly, it's part-time.
I'm sorry?
It's hourly, it's a part-time position.
Okay, but it's a Unit B, right? Okay. And because it says here, preference may be given to staff who can work multiple days per week? Can you explain that? Because I'm thinking Unit B, I'm thinking someone that's an administrator that works 40 hours a week. Can we have a part-time Unit B person?
Mr. Lang?
Yeah, this is like an after-school program type thing. So this would be to pay one of our existing LSAA social workers outside of their regular workday, whenever their workday ends, at the LSAA contractual rate of $32.50 an hour.
Okay.
For grant opportunities or grant programs. It's not an additional social worker that'll be
Okay.
hired. It's one of our social workers who will be selected and hopefully can work multiple days in an after-school program.
All right, thank you for the clarification, I appreciate that.
Further discussion? Motion to accept, motion to approve by Mr. Leary, seconded by Mr. Conway. Roll call.
Mr. Gendron? Mr. Leary?
Yes.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
Ms. Ross Sikowicz?
Yes.
Ms. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Conway?
Yes.
Mayor Elliott?
Yes.
6 yeas, 1 absent, approved.
Next item, permission to post student center tutor. Madam Superintendent?
Yes, again, this is an after-school position to provide additional tutoring to students who may in fact be out of school or need extra help for specific reasons.
Move to approve by Ms. Martin, seconded by Ms. Ross Sikowicz. Roll call.
Mr. Gendron? Mr. Leary?
Yes.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
Ms. Ross Sikowicz?
Yes.
Ms. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Conway?
Yes.
Mayor Elliott?
Yes.
6 yeas, 1 absent, approved.
Next item, still in the new business, we have permission to post student database assistant.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a position that's replacing, it's a part-time position. Our data manager retired, and so that job was filled by someone who moved up in the organization. This is to provide part-time data entry people who assist. That was, we have had a part-time position. That person just moved up to the full-time position as a student data management director. And so this is to provide part-time positions from Title I funding to help with that information.
Thank you, Madam Superintendent. Discussion? Move to approve by Ms. Martin, seconded by Ms. Scott. Roll call.
Mr. Gendron? Mr. Leary?
Yes.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
Ms. Ross Sikowicz?
Yes.
Ms. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Conway?
Yes.
Mayor Elliott?
Yes.
6 yeas, 1 absent, approved.
Thank you. Having no further business before the committee, entertain a motion to adjourn by Ms. Ross Sikowicz, seconded by Ms. Martin. All those in favor signify by saying aye. And the opposed? Motion carries. Meeting is adjourned. Have a good evening.